Embrace who you really are, son. And you will become a legend.
When the man comes around.
Kraven the Hunter is a story of the making of a villain.
My son, they are prey. We are predators.
This is a standalone movie. This is Sergei Kravinoff becoming Kraven.
It is a family saga.
You are exactly like our father.
You don't get to do that to me anymore.
But it is also a good old-fashioned gangster story.
This is not about money. This is about power.
JC truly does deliver a raw, gritty, real-world movie.
We actually use real locations outside in the weather.
I'm so lucky I get to do the stunts. Old school, real, raw, barefoot, running through the streets of London, doing flips and running off the wall, because he needed to have that kind of authenticity.
An assassin who uses methods of the animals.
There was some element of bloodlust that he seemed to love.
There's 6 of us, and only one of you.
There was a justification for it.
There's 6 of you now.
Method. But he is also this very inconsistent, ethically compromised individual.
Embrace who you really are, son.
But yet, still, you're rooting for him.
Once you're on his list, there's only one way off.
Where's Mr. Tagley?
You're standing in him.
Just ticking the boxes off the list. What have we got next? Okay, Chorney, we'll go for him. Where is he? In a prison, sure, no problem.
The choice to make an R-rated film allowed me to be far more honest about that journey.
He's not a superhero. He's a man who's been trained and is skilled hunter and killer.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Kraven time. Sony just released a brand new Kraven trailer. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. We also have to talk about the total collapse of the Sony-Marvel universe, just because all of their plans have changed. There were so many movies they had planned as of last year. As of this year, all their movie plans have completely changed as they pivot to Null, God of Symbiotes, and all the Venom-based characters. So we'll break it all down, because a lot of this also depends on the future of Spider-Man, which they're still sharing with Marvel through Tom Holland's character, in all their plans for the Spider-Verse movies, which are kind of like a separate thing inside Sony, and they do have long-term plans for live-action Miles Morales, which is also part of this new direction they're taking their live-action movies. They really, really, really want some of that Spider-Man energy inside all these other spin-off movies that keep mentioning Spider-Man but never show him, so it explains why Sony has canceled most of the movies that they announced just a couple years ago. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I will do videos for whatever they do actually wind up releasing, and there is a solid chance that the Kraven movie, which is going to be rated R, they're finally letting one of their movies be rated R when the Venom movies should have always been rated R. I definitely think it's going to help its chances to be a decent movie. I do think it has a shot to actually be a fairly decent movie. Aaron Taylor Johnson crossing the Marvel multiverse, bet you didn't see that coming. But the big thing with this trailer is them just hyping up the Rhino and telling you about the villain origin story that's going down in this movie. They're not totally positioning him as an anti-hero in the way the Venom movies have completely pivoted on that character. In the new footage, he says he calls it a villain origin story, like they position him as if he's the hero of this movie, the anti-hero, but it's actually meant to be a villain origin story, kind of like the Penguin series was a real villain origin story for Sophia Falcone. If you didn't watch my episodes for that, she was a character who was wronged by her family and her father, Carmine Falcone, but then eventually, through those events, wound up being turned into a villain. So the way that Aaron Taylor Johnson talks about this movie, he gets his spider-bite version of an origin story. Don't worry, we'll unpack that in a second, because it does seem like they're leaning heavily into the Spider-Man aspects of it all. Gets his animal-based powers, then comes back to eventually hunt his father's organization, mob style, like they call it, kind of a mob movie crossed with a Spider-Man type of movie. Steamrolling all of them, John Wick style, just going through them one at a time on a list, forming a list. Everybody remembers Arrow Season 1 in the list. And through those events, that becomes his villain origin story. Like, those drive him to a darker and darker place until he becomes a villain. But here's some of the stuff that has changed for Sony behind the scenes. So like on an organizational level, a lot of these spin-off Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man in them were all intended to eventually cross over into like a big Sinister Six style team up. So his Kraven was going to be on that team like Kraven was on the original Sinister Six team. But in typical Sony fashion, as you've seen going all the way back to like the Morbius movie, full Morbin time, they have all these Spider-Man references, like all this build up to Spider-Man Sinister Six energy. Then by the time those movies came out, they pulled all that stuff out, and they did it for almost every single movie that they did. Like the trailers would have all the Spider-Man stuff in them, but then they would pull it out by the time they released the movies. Then they progressively start performing worse and worse on a box office level, with the exception of the Venom movies, which have been their only movies that they've really had outside of the Spider-Verse movies that have made any money for them. And even when you consider the Spider-Verse movies, they don't make that much money compared to what Sony, Marvel, the other people who actually make movies consider to be a lot of money. The last couple Tom Holland Spider-Man live-action movies have earned over $1 billion. Sony's really looking to capture that kind of box office energy with these spin-off characters. So part of the idea the last year or so is that Sony's completely changed their plans going forward and is rolling hard on their Thanos-level figure, positioning him as Null God of Symbiotes for a big crossover, which will feature more Spider-Man-based characters. They haven't said when they're going to release that. I've already done a couple videos about it, like I just did a Venom 4 video for the Agent Venom movie that they're developing. It's like the next iteration of the Venom character going forward. What they're actually doing with the movies that they've already finished making, like Kraven, for instance, like they worked on this a couple years ago, but then changed their plans while they were working on it. They're basically trying to see how well it does in theaters before they decide to continue with the Kraven character. The same thing happened with a lot of other characters too. If Madam Web had inexplicably earned a ton of money, then more of those characters would probably come back. But it did not, so you probably will not see those characters, except for maybe Sydney Sweeney's character. Which, funny story, Sydney Sweeney actually just revealed the only reason why she did that Madam Web movie was because it was to convince the studio, Sony, to make her rom-com movie that she did with Glenn Powell, which made way more money than Madam Web. So pretty smart gambit on Sydney Sweeney's part. And essentially, Sony's new plan is to use their Null God of Symbiotes, big overarching figure in the Venom franchise as the backbone going forward to sort of soft reboot all their live-action big crossover plans. That is probably why we're going to see them soft reboot things when we get to Avengers Secret Wars. Like Avengers 6 for the MCU represents this soft reboot point for the Marvel Universe where they can retool things behind the scenes when they recreate the multiverse. If you've read the more recent version of Secret Wars in the comics, during that story, the multiverses collapsed down to Battle World, like a single world for all of reality, the entire multiverse. But at the end of that story, they recreate the multiverse, and there are a couple minor changes, like a couple tweaks to the multiverse that happen. And Marvel's basically going to be doing that with the live-action MCU. They're using it as a soft reboot point so that when they recreate the main 616 universe and all these other universes, and a lot of the characters go home to their original universes, they can change things on the main MCU Earth and make it look more like the true comic book 616 universe, where all the different characters from other universes right now, like the X-Men characters, Fantastic Four characters, have always existed on the same Earth all together, and nobody thinks it's weird. So there's no special multiverse explainer for how they all cross over going forward into Marvel Phase 7. It sounds like Sony's going to do something similar heading forward around that same time, like in the next several years. Probably timed with the introduction of live-action Miles Morales. My early theory right now, and probably the strongest bet that they have if they really want a version of Spider-Man, is they'll use his live-action Miles Morales as the backbone for like the future of all their spin-off movies. So when they want to have a Sinister Six team-up movie, they can just put Miles Morales in it and maybe cross over like another version of like Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire, or even Tom Holland can cross over too if they want. But their entire plan of movies doesn't depend just on Tom Holland showing up in the movies or like Tobey Maguire only coming back or Andrew Garfield only coming back, because it seems like in a lot of cases, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire don't want to have anything to do with these Sony spin-off movies. Like they'll come back for cameos in like really big MCU movies because obviously really big paydays in the movies themselves tend to be a lot better. But they're not going to sign up for like 10 different spin-off movies that they all do at the same time. Whereas like a brand new actor, live-action Miles Morales, might be more willing to do something like that. Generally, looking at the Kraven footage that they've been releasing, a lot of this is the similar trailer footage from the previous trailers, looks way more hardcore, makes you wonder why they never decided to do Venom as a rated R movie. We could have had it so good. Usually the reason why studios do that, though, like the big reason is money. Because of the way they are able to market rated R movies, the rules are different. Like there's special rules inside North America about the way they could market rated R movies versus PG-13 movies. The way the math works out on that is that they let the PG-13 movies spend more money because they can market it to families, which can potentially buy 4 tickets, for instance, instead of just buying 2 tickets, which would be more like a rated R movie where older people tend to go. To be fair, that first Deadpool movie did gangbusters, but I did see a ton of families walking out in the middle of the movie, particularly around the pegging scene. I never laughed so hard in the theater at stuff that was not just the pure movie. Like you just watch families with little kids walking out of the theater having to explain that to their little kids. Like, okay, this is what's going on between this man and this woman. When Disney was going to buy Fox, that's kind of the reason why Ryan Reynolds did that whole Once Upon a Deadpool PG-13 version of Deadpool 2 to show Disney that he could do that. But ultimately, Kevin Feige and Bob Iger, like the powers that be at Disney and Marvel, said that they could make their Deadpool and Wolverine movie rated R, so it wasn't really a big problem. And it just made over $1 billion, proving to you that you can actually do a rated R movie and still earn a crazy amount of money. So personally, I think that Sony's fears in people not going to see Venom because it was rated R were completely unfounded. Like, it probably would have actually done better if it were rated R. But if you guys don't remember, here's a short list of all the Sony movies that have been started and then canceled in the last couple of years. You probably remember them mentioning some of these. So there was a Silver Sable movie, a Black Cat movie, a Sandman movie, a Rhino movie, like we see Rhino and Chameleon during the Kraven trailer. There was a Scorpion movie. They were also doing a Jessica Drew Spider-Woman movie and Spider-Man 2099 in live action, but all that stuff has since been canceled. Sony still has the rights to Spider-Man in the movies, and as part of those rights, they have access to do movies for up to 900 different characters, which is why you hear about so many weird-sounding movies, like the El Muerto movie that they said they were going to do. Like, why would you do a movie about that? Mostly because they're chasing money and they can do it. But like we've seen the last couple of years, just because they say they're going to do something doesn't mean they'll actually wind up doing it. So everybody post all your reactions in the comments below. What do you think about the Kraven movie so far? Like I said, I think it has a chance to actually be a fairly decent movie. And what do you want them to do with the character going forward if they're pivoting to live action Miles Morales in like the new Venom line of movies with Null, God of Symbiotes? I think mostly people just want to see what live-action Miles Morales is going to look like while it's going on at the same time that you have live-action Tom Holland Spider-Man going on in the MCU, and will Miles Morales also show up in some of those future Tom Holland MCU movies? If you listen to Tom Holland talk about it, he actually talks about doing Miles Morales in some of those MCU Spider-Man sequels like Spider-Man 5, 6. I don't think he's going to be in Spider-Man 4, so don't think about him too much too fast. But I am sure we will hear all about it from Sony and Marvel the next couple of years. There's a bunch of big stuff coming up. I just did that Venom 4 video about the next Venom movie that Sony's working on. Click here to learn about that, and click here for all those brand new trailer videos for Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts movie. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.